On June 22nd, we started the day in Perleberg, where back in 1945, German soldiers had been in a hurry to get rid of Mom and her two companions. And so this may have been a point where she was feeling a little safer from the threat to the east, but she still had a long way to go. They were now back on their bikes and heading to the northwest. So here's the last excerpt of what she wrote of that one piece of writing I found about this experience. In addition to what she says here, she also told us that this is where she started seeing prisoners from concentration camps, I guess released by the Brits or the Americans, walking along the road as they rode along. Also, other wreckage of war, dead animals and dead people sometimes in the fields by the road or in the road itself. We pedaled to the northwest, and after the next day we were over the line, the Elbe River, where the Russians would meet the Americans. I had told my mother I would aim for Lose, close to the Danish border, where my father and I had visited a friend of his from the First World War 2 years earlier. The grandmother knew that her daughter would try to reach Schleswig, the border town to Denmark, where her husband was in the hospital. It was also a reason she agreed to come along with me. Still, all three of us felt guilty to have left our mothers behind and my sister, but also hoped they would support each other and not be abused. Only my sister was raped, the first time a little more than a half hour after we had biked away. We had escaped a few hours ahead of the Russians in our salt sack trucks. It took us 6 days from leaving that basement in Brandenburg to reach Schleswig-Holstein. Those chocolate bars helped the first few days. Some farmers allowed us to boil flour from our little sack to a sort of thick paste, salt they would share, and that's what we ate. Hunger made even that palatable. We could sleep on straw in the sheep barn, where the old male sheep coughed all night like old men, I thought. We were too exhausted to be bothered. When I opened my eyes, I looked into the eyes of a little lamb licking my face, which had woken me up. A sweet moment in all on that trek. Well, as for us, we had a beautiful day of driving. We left the Deutsche Kaiser Hotel, the beautiful little stream behind it, had a nice breakfast, and then packed up our bikes, and off we were on the road. The bike path leaving Perleberg was beautiful along this little canal, beautiful scenes of the city. And after we made our way through that, we started out into farmland again. The good news is the winds were way, way down. We hardly had a headwind at all today. Talking about wind, we saw all kinds of windmills and other kinds of alternative energy. The energy transition was in parents here. A lot of barns and things with big solar arrays along them, including full arrays out in fields. As usual, beautiful little towns that we pass through. This was a sign for a Mallorca party, but we're going to leave that to Fabian and Cecily back in Mallorca. We've been puzzling over various things we're seeing growing in the fields. We think this was rapeseed here. It looks a lot like mustard, which they're probably growing here. Beautiful flowers as usual. This is a stork that was just wandering in a field next to us.
Now we get under the tracks.
We had a little more stretches along the road without bike paths this time. Came to this funny place that Julia might have liked. And then right in the middle of nowhere, we come across this public art. Had a fun little stop here. We crossed the Autobahn one time, nice not to have to bike along that. And then we arrived in Ludwigslust, where we had lunch. Some of us dined in a little cafe along this street. And after going to a market, which had beautiful food, and then I had decided to have lunch, a little picnic lunch, in Ludwigslust Park, the big park. A lot of people walking around in it that was behind the castle. That's my lunch spot. Well, I had a lunch my mother would have loved: pickled herring, smoked trout, and after eating, I had a nice little bike stroll through the park, complete with deer, some swans swimming on a lake, beautiful little outbuildings, and eventually I met up with the rest of the crowd, and we had a little dessert of some fruit Mimi had bought at the market, and met this guy Peter who talked about his experience living in East Germany and more. And then we made our way out from Ludwigslust towards Hagenow. This was a great little building. We didn't see a lot like this. Old style German farmhouse. Once again, the track was varied. Sometimes paved road, but a lot again of these farming roads, I guess they would be, that would go between fields and so on. Always nice to find a free toilet.
Never married, and they were really special aunts and uncles. Well, one was a priest. He wasn't gonna get married. Hey, hi. And
That little stretch was actually pretty tough. It was sandy, like cycling on the beach. Well, finally we came to Hagenow. That meant we were very close to the end of our trip. Here's a typical sight. Me stopping to take a photo of the beautiful landscape we're going through. And I had a little bike trouble. Seems like one a day is the pattern so far, at least one a day. Finally, we met up with Ina and Klaus for dinner. So nice to meet up with more family as part of this trip. That's Ina is Annaliese's niece, and Klaus is her husband. So nice to end the day with them.